Welcome to the Evening Review. My name is Klage, and joining us in studio is political analyst Ndumba Kamwanyah. Before we go into the interview, please have a look at the headlines. Welcome back to the Evening Review, Mr. Kamwanyah.
Thank you for having me.
We've seen now what seems like a breakdown in the City of Windhoek coalition amongst the councillors. Looking back in the last 10, 11 months, should it be any surprise that the coalition partners find themselves in this position?
I am not surprised. And I think at some occasions with some journalists, I have mentioned that a coalition by nature is very complex because of a number of factors, more in particular because the partners or parties to the coalitions have different interests, different positions on issues, and different ideologies. So those qualities or characteristic of parties will definitely play out whether the coalition will succeed or not. And that's what we have been witnessing with the Windhoek City coalition, that it finds itself entrenched in each party's individual ideologies, interests, and positions on issues. So as a result, what we are seeing now is that definitely the coalition is sinking. I don't think that there is a hope to revive it.
And then my other question is, recently we saw this week the three partners in the coalition agreement, that being Affirmative, Repositioning movement, the Popular Democratic movement, as well as Nudo, writing to Dr. Itula, sort of asking him why he had engaged the Landless People's Movement. What would this say about the relationship amongst the coalition partners? How would you describe that?
And I think there is a lack of communication among the coalition partners because important to know here is that a coalition does not operate through an invisible hand. It operates through active engagement of the parties involved. And this means that there has to be a communication to check, each other's level in terms of the participation in the coalition. In other words, that there's supposed to be a feedback loop in which each and every partner in the coalition get that information, and they assess and they reassess their participation, and they communicate behind the scene to make sure that they are on pair. But what has been happening, I think, the coalition partners sort of thought that it is an automated process, that everything will just run smoothly, invisibly, or pushed by an invisible hand, without them really working towards the building of that coalition. So there has to be a conscious effort to work to maintain the coalition and the cohesion and avoid a breakdown. But it seems that this was not the case in terms of making sure that the coalition partners are on pair in terms of their understanding of the processes, the issues, and the approaches.
There's an issue I want to touch on, and this now obviously speaks to the issue of the mayor, Dr. Job Amupanda. And
yes.
What one seems to get out of the AR movement is that they are highlighting key successes such as the transparent recruitment of the CEO and other issues. But if one were to judge the mayor and to that effect the coalition, can one say that there has been significant strides made, or was the year not enough for us residents of the city of Windhoek to be able to see an impact?
Well, first of all, I want to say that really it's not just Dr. Amupanda. That success should be ascribed to just Dr. Amupanda. Maybe perhaps to his leadership, but I think it should be attributed to the collective decisions of all the parties that are involved in the council, and more in particular probably the coalition. So your second part of the question in terms of the achievements, yes and no. Yes, in the sense that we have seen a little bit of a traction in terms of setting up foundations and the sort of infrastructures that will be used to implement some of the programs and the initiatives that the City of Windhoek Council was going to take. So it's really traction on the ground level, just setting up the infrastructure. And know that if you really look at the time spent on the infighting, especially among the coalition partners, so one could conclude that infighting really contributed to the reality that their initiative, their implementation, occurred at a very slow pace, because instead of really focusing on the implementation, efforts and energies were spent on trying to deal with the infightings, and to some extent also trying to outmaneuver each other and all those kind of things. So I think that in itself is difficult to really say that the coalition has achieved something tangible.
And looking at the coalition, looking at the coalition, should they want to go back to the drawing board and come back as a united force for the remaining 4 years? What are some of the issues that you feel they could address?
First and foremost, I think egos and character, personality traits. What we have seen is that a lot of the infightings can be attributed to egos and personality cult, people trying to outmaneuver each other, people to just think that my way is my way, instead of compromising. Coalition is a collective effort, and what it demands is really that there has to be, it is a give and take, you know. At some point, you have to give up to gain. At some point, you have to take to lose. So really, they have to redefine the relationship, and also that the coalition must be based on a give and take instead of my way and your way. Then it becomes a competition, and that's what we have observed and witnessed with this coalition, that to some extent there is some sort of a competition. So if you are operating on a competitive basis, then really that collective aspect of a coalition is pushed to the back. And when you push it to the back, that competitive edge of each party trying to win or trying to make itself relevant take over, and that is the end of the coalition.
Then I also want to know from your end, as coalition partners in this agreement, are we at a stage where this coalition, of course, it being the first significant, if one may call it that, has done enough to actually convince voters to look elsewhere other than the ruling party?
I will say that this, being the first that we have seen in terms of the parties that are involved, of course, there has been some coalition in one or another way. That this is a case study, and you cannot compare with the previous coalitions where voters did not really pay attention for various reasons. But now we are seeing a shift in terms of voters' behaviors and attitudes. And I want to think that voters have paid attention and are paying attention. And that could spell bad for future coalitions, more in particular when it comes to opposition parties. So that really sent the message that coalitions formed by opposition parties and opposition groups are good for nothing. And that has been, I think, the message that people have been complaining about opposition parties, that they don't come up with alternatives. And now there was a chance for them to prove that they can do or they can come up with a better alternative than the ruling party. But here we are, and we find ourselves at ground zero again. And and it weakens even their arguments that the Swapo party was failing. So this type of behavior that we are seeing is really selling themselves into the hands of the ruling party, and also hold them accountable to the same behaviors and attitudes when it comes to the city of Windhoek.
I've got two more questions for you, and I want us to pause here for a moment as we go into an ad break. To follow up, I want now to ask, there's been this issue of Swapo being touted as a potential playmaker as far as the City of Windhoek Council is concerned.
Yes.
How do you see at this point in time perhaps another formation forming within this council, and how realistic is the prospect of having Swapo come back into the spotlight as far as the City of Windhoek Council is concerned?
Yes, and they say that there's no permanent enemies in politics. So the possibility that Swapo might find itself also part of the coalition is there. It depends on the parameters and the definition of that coalition. But what I will say is that definitely if Swapo comes back to the coalition pact, Swapo will be the winner in this case. For example, let's say if Itula's party entered into coalition with Swapo and another party, let's say maybe LPM. And remember, their campaign was based on saying that Swapo is some sort of incompetent. They cannot run the affairs of the city and all those kind of things. And then now you come and join into coalition with them. Definitely that will catch the eyes and ears of their supporters and their voters. So it will depend how they will have to explain it to their supporters and members in a convincingly manner. Otherwise, it will have implications for them. But it is a plus for Swapo really to come back into the coalition, and there is a possibility with the widening gaps between the current coalition partners. We might see a new coalition pact that may include the ruling party.
And then lastly, looking now obviously at the Independent Patriots for Change, where you've had the coalition partners sort of label Dr. Itula as being dictatorial on the one hand, and then on the other you see IPC councillors being restrained and so forth. How much of an impact is this, do you think this will have, should the coalition come back, the original coalition, in terms of them working together?
No, the level of the language that they are using towards each other from both ends, it does not seem that there is a likelihood that this coalition, this current coalition, will be revived because the language in itself has become harsh and personalized. So unless really they have to find a new ground, but I don't see any hope that it will be revived at this stage. And what I will say about Dr. Itula and the perception that he is a dictator to some extent, I think he should not ignore that perception that is out there, whether it is real or perceived. The burden is on him really to show that it is just a figment of imagination by some people or by the public. Because if he's being silent, not addressing that issue heads on, it will be entrenched in the public's mind that he is that type of a leader than what he sold the voters during the elections. And I would also say that this is not just for Dr. Itula, Dr. Amupanda himself also, that he needs to reflect on his leadership when while he was a mayor, and also reflect on the weaknesses that might have contributed to where the coalition partners is today. Because I said that a coalition pact requires conscious effort to work to build it. And one of the most important elements to build a coalition is leadership. So in this case, leadership as the of Job Amupanda as the mayor, in making sure that he's bringing people together, but also leadership of the leaders of those parties that are part and parcel of the coalition, to make sure that behind the scene they are, mentoring and coaching and advising and also reaching out to the mayor and other coalition partners. So in that way, it become an active engagement. It become a process of consultation, a process of listening to each other, a process of checking the coalition's pulse in terms of where each and every party stand, and how do we bring the party that is lagging behind or on par with each other. You have to work towards this, and that did not happen.
Thank you very much for joining us on the Evening Review.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in. Good night.